Hi, and welcome to a non-track and non-trail episode of Real Trail Talk. I am Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mark Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 57. As Don mentioned, we are not talking about specific trails or tracks, but rather an alternate hobby that we both partake in over the summer months when hiking isn't really an option.
Yeah.
So joining us, because she has a wealth of experience, is Shavaurn Hansen, who is a adventure, water sports, diving, snorkelling guru around Perth. Would that be correct, Shavaurn?
Just an enthusiast.
Yeah. So we brought her in because we are talking about snorkelling and diving around WA. So this will be a two-part episode. So part one, which you're listening to at the moment, will be Perth and the South West, and then we'll go up the Coral Coast and the Northwest to continue. So we're going to define Perth, the northern border, as Yanchep Lagoon as a snorkelling destination. Now, I've not done this one, and neither of you, Donovan.
No,
but
I haven't.
You have, Shavaurn.
Yep,
so
I have.
do you want to tell all the listeners what makes that a good snorkelling spot?
It's a good family-oriented snorkel spot, so you can bring the children and have a first go at snorkeling there, and you'll spot just little reefy fish, and yeah, it's crystal clear, beautiful. It's just a really nice pool-like lagoon. So
Awesome.
Next on the list is the Marmion Angling and Aquatic Club dive trail that they've just put in. So this one is like a new trend in Perth that's happened, where we put in snorkel trails when really it's not necessarily needed, but it's a good way of getting people out.
I think it's a bit like the 1988 trend of Heritage Trail. Like, if you say Heritage Trail, you'll get some money. And here, if you add the word trail to anything, you'll get some money.
I mean, it's a good location. I mean, there's plenty of parking where there is. It's a popular, activity hub anyway for runners and cyclists. So it's good to get people out in the water. And it's basically an out depth to about 6 meters. And then you come in there's like a break in the two little exposed reefs there, and it was really cool. Actually, there's lots of seagrass there and kelp. Fish were a little hard to find on my visit, but I did see an eagle ray, my first one in the water.
Awesome.
On that visit, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, again, a good beginner's trail to start with if you're looking at getting into snorkeling.
Do you think the fact that there is a trail makes it easier for someone who is maybe unaware of how to snorkel?
Yes and no. I found it really hard to find the trail because it's a series of underwater plinths that you're meant to follow, and after a while I just lost where they were. But it's a good guide when you're looking at the map as to where you should be going anyway. So if you're not really following the plinths, it's no big deal. Just go out to where you're comfortable, and it shows you where the exposed reefs are if you're not too comfortable in shallow water. And then moving on, Medham's Pool. This is one that I've been meaning to go to, but I haven't quite got around to it. It looks like a cool spot.
Yeah, it is a pretty cool spot. What do you think of it, Shavaurn?
I really liked it. So I went there fairly recently with one of my dive buddies. So I believe the history of Medham's Pool is that it was blasted out to allow access to some older people with who were frail and couldn't have access to the ocean. So it's a small little bathing lagoon inside. So those who aren't experienced or children can enjoy a little snorkel inside the shallows, and then you can go past and outside the reef and experience. It's like it was really good. A variety of life there. It was like a little mini rot nest. So the same sort of kelp and swim throughs, schooling fish, tarween. It was a really good snorkel, but you do have to be careful about your conditions there, because any bit of surge or swell and it's just not pleasant. The visibility gets really poor, and it's not a great snorkel if it's not the right conditions. So you do have to check the direction of the swell and the height of the swell, and of course wind as well. Yeah. But we picked a really good day and went out. So no wind, no swell, great conditions to have a look there.
The day that I went there, because I've only been the one time, it was probably not the best conditions, but it still was teeming with life. And there's a lot of, I guess, really interesting architecture of the reef to swim around and through. And because of that, there were a lot of fish, like a lot of morwongs, which I think Alyssa and I always look for them when we see them, because they've got that really grumpy face, and they're always a little bit antisocial.
Oh, and they're an impressive fish. They're really large too. So,
Yeah.
people actually do the wrong thing and will spear them, and they shouldn't because they apparently taste terrible and
Yeah, I've heard
bleed
that.
a lot and things. Poor old dusky morlong needs to be looked after a little bit. So,
Yeah.
everybody leave him alone. Yeah.
No wonder they're so antisocial.
Yeah,
and grumpy looking.
and they're always in pairs too. Did you notice that?
I haven't noticed that, but now that you say that, I generally do see at least two rather than just the one. Either don't see them or a few.
Yep.
And what's the depths on the other side of the reef like? Is it fairly deep?
It's only about 5 or 6 meters, so deep enough that you can have a good time in a swim through if you feel comfortable diving down and going in, but also shallow enough that someone who's newer to snorkeling can see the bottom and feel really happy and comfortable snorkeling there.
Nice. Moving on to Rottnest. So this is kind of like the best of Perth snorkeling locations.
Yeah.
The island is pretty much full of just great snorkeling. Each little bay has its own little protected area you can explore. But the main ones, I guess we'll talk about the Basin, Salmon Bay, Little Salmon Bay, Parker Point,
Yeah.
Little Armstrong Bay. All really cool.
Yeah, I think we have talked about the trails there before. We talked about Rottnest.
Yeah.
However, I think that the best one there is Salmon Bay. Not Little Salmon Bay, but Big Salmon Bay. The amount of coral there is really impressive, and I think as far as coral reef near a capital city goes, I think that that'll be pretty hard to beat anywhere in Australia with any of the other capital cities.
Because of the direction of the Leeuwin Current, so it's the southernmost extension that all of that life that lives in warmer waters and likes meets at this latitude. So things that wouldn't live in the south live at Rottnest because of the Leeuwin Current. So it's sort of a trickle down from Ningaloo through the Abrolhos, and then just at that very end of the Leeuwin Current is Rottnest. So all of that life is kind of deposited there, and the warm current provides really good conditions for all these interesting fish and grasses and corals to grow and really well there.
Yeah.
So I think your beginner snorkeler or visitor will visit Rottnest and go snorkeling and not realise you get the bright corals that you wouldn't expect this far south, and it's kind of cool to see them, especially the big purple ones and
all the
different
pinks
variety of fish, and it's just an underrated thing about Rottnest, I think, is the snorkeling.
It's
there.
much better than quokka selfies, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go grab yourself a dusky moor selfie instead. Or
I love all the swim throughs. I'm a real swim through fan. So because it's a limestone island, the undersea has been carved out by all the currents and channels, and you can go for a dip and through and have a good time doing that. Within safety, your own limits, of course. But I just love Rottnest for that.
I think that's one of the cool things about Rottnest is that the southern side of it is more the coral gardens, and then the north side's got a lot of really nice rocky swim throughs, and like the bays there they have a different character, so they maybe don't have the big ticket of the coral reefs as much, but they still have other things that are worth snorkeling through and seeing. Absolutely.
And the other good thing about Rottnest, given the difference in the north and south, is that you can, on any given wind condition, you can find a bay that's suitable for the wind direction of that day. So if it's the southwest whipping through, you can always find something on the northeast of the island that's well protected. So that's something great about Rottnest. You can kind of adjust your trip planning for and find a really great spot. Whereas if you're on the mainland, you might be a bit stuck if it's a southwest really howling through that day.
Yeah.
And especially Perth summer conditions is usually best for snorkeling, and you usually get the Frio dock to come in. So
and
it's a great
blows
escape.
it all out. There's a really good book, and I've seen it at the chart and map shop down in Fremantle, but it's a Snorkeler's Guide to Rottnest, and it's got not topographic maps, but hand drawings basically of all of the highlighted interesting cave here, suggested snorkel trails almost for every single bay at Rottnest. So I really recommend people would check that out if they really wanted to explore Rottnest really thoroughly. It's a really good option. Yeah, and it'll give you a chart of which bays work on which wind directions as well. So that's a good one to pick up.
Awesome.
Because there is a book they sell over on the island, and it's like a fisheries guide, but it's mainly for fishing, not
fish IDing. So that's great if you love that sort of naturist kind of. I'm terrible with naming fish. I have a friend who's always naming them. I always forget the names really quickly. But I just, call them, the upside down looking fish with the big eye. And, but, yeah.
So moving from one popular spot to another, the Omeo wreck, or Omeo, however you want to pronounce that.
Yeah.
Interesting history, and it's really weird that it's only just become like a big thing recently. Now they've put a trail in. So going back to you build it and people will come. It's a really cool area, although it's starting to become way too popular for its own good.
Yeah. So this is one that for Alyssa and I is not far, so we go quite often. Because if you just want something that's, you want half an hour in the water, an hour in the water, you can go. It's pretty easy. You're generally likely to see something of interest. However, recently I went on a hot weekend, and it was it's almost become a victim of its own success. I saw a lot of people leaving some trace. They were standing on the wreck. They were, touching way too much.
Yeah.
And there was hardly any fish there. So all the fish must be hiding inside, So I think it's something that it says to me, well, I think it's great that it exists, and I'm glad that the build it and they will come mantra worked. However, I think that there needs to be a bit more of a dispersal of people, because it does get a bit too popular. I grew up in the area, and as a kid, no one went there. It was always people went to Woodman Point, but now it's super, super busy. And I think for the future of the wreck, and also for the experience of people going to see it, it's something that needs to be monitored. I think that they don't go too crazy with the numbers.
You do see the differences in growth on the trail over the winter and the summer as well. So I went with a friend last winter, and you sort of see a huge difference in the growth and the life, because not as many people are snorkeling on it in the winter. So it sort of proves that point that you just made.
And also at the moment there's a whole lot of sand that's been washed in, and so it's not as you can't go inside as much, which is a shame, because that was always a cool thing, is kind of get in there and see all the fish hiding inside. And now they've got less of a place to stay. But hopefully as the weather changes, it will clear out. Yeah,
and that's the interesting thing about snorkeling, is every time you go somewhere, it'll be different based on weather, based on what species of fish are around. So, yep.
Yeah, that's a really cool area. I love it. And I like that they're adding to it all the time, although I think they've maybe got the placement a bit wrong, because some of the deeper structures they put in, it's always very murky every time I go, especially the big temple that's, I think, right near the seawall at the very end.
Yeah, they've got 2 of them now, 2 or 3. So they've got the older one, and the 2 newer ones are quite close by. And they're, the difference between the growth on the old and the new. Because I remember snorkeling the trail when it first got put in and watching it grow, and now we get to see all these things, all the new items get their growth happening. And they've got a new cannon and a new, new like habitats and things like that to look in. There's sometimes octopus in there. If you look along the seawall as well, it's always very interesting. So don't forget that may or may not be officially part of the trail, but all those rock walls are hiding some really cool things. There's always crays in there to look at, and you can go for a little bit deeper there. It's 10 or 11 meters as well.
Yeah, cool area. And also in the area is Ammo Jetty. There's a series of jetties here. So Ammo Jetty and the grain terminal, which you're allowed to go on.
Yeah, and there's Rob's Jetty just near Woodman Point as well. So there used to be an abattoir in the area and horse tracks apparently, and Rob's Jetty was part of that. So Rob's Jetty is near the sculpture of C.Y. O'Connor, and so you can locate these poles, and just there's a lot of growth on the poles and a couple lying down. It's good and sort of deeper. If you like to go a little bit deeper and look at the fish, you can look in the pipes and poles and things. And then you have the Ammo Jetty, the grain terminal, and the bulk jetty, they call them. So just the pylons get some really interesting polyps and corals. It can be really beautiful, and on a slightly less ideal conditions, you're a little bit protected in a jetty. The visibility might be a little bit better, but the bulk jetty in Kwinana, it's got this beautiful atrium at the end of it. It's got sort of its existing beamwork still remains, and you feel like you're in almost like a greenhouse kind of thing at the end of the jetty. It's really quite beautiful. So they're always interesting to look at, jetties. Don't forget about those.
And how's the access to the jetty, especially the grain terminal? Is it certain times that you're allowed to visit, or are you just allowed all the time?
There's signage up that says you're not allowed to visit.
But everyone goes.
But everyone does go. Look, I haven't seen any sort of grain terminal police down there kicking people off. But look, I think all of these things are within your own limits, within your own risk. But there's always other divers down there. There's always other snorkelers, always other snorkeling groups. I think it's you really have to self-assess with snorkeling. So if you feel that you're a beginner snorkeler and, everything's within your own limits, so you have a snorkeling buddy and, you should not allow them to push you where you're not ready to be pushed and go to places where you're not comfortable to go to. You can always say, look, this isn't for me. And by the same token, if you feel a little bit more advanced, then find a suitable buddy for you to go with. It's no good trying to push your partner into doing something they're not comfortable doing.
And a little further south, around Rockingham area, we have Point Perrin, which is a place we went. Was it last year, Don?
Yeah, last year, over the summer when we were getting the cabin fever from no hiking.
So there's a couple of spots here within that same sort of bay and beach that you can pretty much swim to from each one, and it's a really cool spot. It's fairly sheltered inside, but then you can go on the other side of the reef and it gets a little bit wilder. And this is also the point where the hammerheads like to congregate. There was a viral video that went around last year with a girl I follow on Instagram, and there's a drone footage of her above the hammerheads as they were going along, which was really, really cool.
You go quite often, don't you?
Yeah, I love Point Perrin. I think, again, it's like a little bit of a mini rot nest. And there's, for me, depending on the weather, I've got about an hour and a half in me, maybe 2 hours of snorkel time. And so Point Perrin's quite a large area, so you can't really do it all in one visit, I feel. It also has a snorkel trail, an official plinth sort of thing. Children enjoy that kind of Easter egg hunt of finding the plinth. There's all these different areas. So there's a couple of different arms of Point Perrin where you can go around, and then there's a bay, and then go around again, and there's another bay, and you'll find swim-throughs and bunkers and lots of different holes to explore towards the outer reef, all sorts of different life. So you'll see there's a resident eagle ray, a really large eagle ray. You'll see a crayfish, you'll see baler shells with the mollusk out crawling across the sand. There's always something different. Last time I was there, we saw a large schooling fish, series of schooling fish, and then immediately after, 4 or 5 dolphins popped up and said hello. Yeah, it was really wonderful. So you can really score well with Point Perrin, and it's not usually too crowded. There's people there, but I wouldn't say it's like the Omeo where it's packed out and busy and people are ruining things. Although last time I did see a man taking quite a big shell from Point Perrin, and it's a reminder that we're not supposed to touch, we're not supposed to take, leave no trace kind of thing. But it's kind of really rubs me the wrong way when you see shell collection. Does it you?
It's not so much all the time, but I think if it is a protected area, then no.
Yeah, it is.
There are some beaches where it's perfectly fine to beachcomb, but then there's some areas, and some people go, they go nuts as well.
Yeah.
So around the Rockingham area, there's actually quite a few, and Penguin Island is another one which has some great snorkeling. Accessible by ferry, or you could walk the sandbar. Again, assess your own risk on that one.
Yeah.
Officially, you should take the ferry. Unofficially, it is possible to walk, and you will see people doing it.
Yeah. Obviously, this is where you need to know a little bit about the tides and the wind and the weather. And the problem is when people do it and they haven't looked at what the weather's going to be, and they attempt to walk out in high tide in 20 knots wind, and they do actually have a jet ski lifeguarding that point over this peak summer, and they will chase people off and say, stop walking, you're not allowed to walk, and they'll escort you off now, because unfortunately a few people have passed away from doing that and not been prepared, not read the weather, and not been able to swim. So with good reason, I think Rockingham councillors set that up so that there's no further loss of life, which is unfortunate. But because as a kid, it's kind of what it was the done thing. You would take a picnic, and your dad would hold the esky above his head and walk over to Penguin Island, and there we'd go for the day. But anyway, yeah, so you should take the ferry.
Yeah. You can kayak there yourself
You
as
can,
well,
or sup.
which we've
Yeah,
done.
it's a nice little paddleboard.
Yep.
Yep.
And yeah, a lot of the good snorkelers on the western side of the island.
So you do have to pick your conditions there as well. So it should be a very light westerly or southwesterly, or more so an easterly. Otherwise, you're going to get you just get bashed into the reef a little bit. It's just not pleasant. Visibility will be poor. Yeah.
And it's not the done thing to snorkel on the northern side of the island, or the northeast side, is it, where the seal colony or the penguin colony is, sorry.
Yeah, they're really protective of the penguins, and if you don't come across on the ferry, they'll individually say, oh, hello, you're here for the day, and they'll say, look, don't touch the penguins, don't talk to the penguins, leave the penguins alone, because they want to make sure that any visitor knows to be careful of the penguins. So they're all in a habitat these days. There's sort of not many of them roaming around, but yeah, you're not supposed to be snorkeling on the northeast. That's where they're nesting.
Another island, or group of islands off there, is Seal Island and Karnak Island, which you can only get to via boat or kayak. Can't you?
So Seal Island is in that same area, and Karnak is halfway between, say, Freo and Rottnest. So Karnak, same again, accessible by boat. Both islands you're not to set foot on. You're not supposed to actually land on with your person or a vessel. So most people would kayak over to Seal Island. There's a couple of like boat moorings there where you can rest. And the thing with snorkeling with the seals, there is a risk. They are wild creatures. They can cause some serious damage. So the idea is that the seals come to you. If they feel like playing, they will come to you. So when I've been on snorkel tours with sea lion charters, they'll tell you, if you play around in the water and do some dives and flips and splashes, that's the best way of inviting them out. When we went to Karnak on a trip, it didn't seem like the seals were keen. We left, we went around the corner a little bit, and then 10 minutes later, boop, up popped a seal, and he joined us when he felt ready. So that's just something to be really mindful of when attempting to snorkel with seals, that when you're not on a charter.
Sure. So are these seals or sea lions?
Oh, there'll be sea lions. Australian sea lions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the big puppies of the sea.
They're absolutely gorgeous, but there is a risk. And actually, a tourist recently got her leg bitten. I think that was at Geraldton, somewhere up there. Yeah, but yeah. So it's if you look it up, it was fairly recently, but not pleasant.
So leaving the Perth metro area, shift down south. There's obviously a lot of snorkeling spots around, so we'll just talk about the ones that we have visited. And Bustleton Jetty, I think, looks certainly one of the best snorkeling spots in the southwest. Very similar to the jetties we already talked about, but on a massive scale because of the length of the jetty.
Yeah. Yep. And the life that you can see at the end of the jetty. Huge schooling fish. And just the kinds of corals and polyps. So schooling fish aside, I think the star of the show is the colours of the corals and polyps on the pylons. Just this bubblegum pink, and it's just gorgeous. And you really, really do want to touch it, but you obviously don't. But it's just those colours. So it's really easy to access. So you actually pay to walk on the jetty. So that actually the tram and the walking on the jetty publicly funds the refurbishment and maintenance of the jetty. So it's always good to, you shouldn't feel like your money's not going anywhere. Oh, I'm paying to walk 3 kilometres. No, it's going to the foundation. So you can walk to the end of the jetty. There's swimming platforms along the way. So if for some reason you don't feel like walking all the way to the end of the jetty, you can access at various points. But the best marine life is at the end of the jetty, the deepest area of the jetty, and there's a large swimming platform at the end where they have divers go off as well. But it's really great. You can get your gear ready and go in. There's ladder access. It's really, really user friendly, suitable for all levels. You do need to be careful with the weather a little bit. So certain winds will make it a little bit murky. So just check the weather.
And there's locker access on the jetty, isn't there, close to the dive area?
Yeah, there is. And you're not supposed to go close to the viewing tank at the bottom as well. You're not supposed to go within 10 metres and do like, faces on the window or
Sure.
not supposed to moon them or anything.
Yeah.
I heard as well that there's like this like spacesuit thing
There
they can
is,
do, so
yeah.
you can wear that to walk on the bottom.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it looks
Is it
pretty.
good?
It looks pretty cumbersome, but
Yeah.
if you haven't experienced diving or for some reason are a little bit nervous about it and just kind of want to do that for the novelty, it looks kind of cool. Looks
Yeah.
a little bit cumbersome, but kind of fun. It'd be good to do as like a bucket list thing or a birthday present or something like that.
Yeah.
And how deep is it at the end of the jetty?
It'd be about 7 or 8 meters. Yeah. So a lot of people who are a little bit rusty on diving, before they go into the other areas of the southwest, some of them will do a refresher dive at the jetty just to get their sort of, diving legs back again.
Cool. Moving further south, so still on the Geograph Bay area, Castle Bay near Dunsborough. Donovan, you raved about this when you went.
This was, so we went down and I think around March last year, and we were just missing Ningaloo because we'd just done Ningaloo in October the previous year, and I just wanted something that was as good in terms of the both the clarity, the amount of fish, the amount of interesting things to see. And when we went there, as soon as we got in the water, I went, oh wow, this is amazing, because the visibility was the best I've seen. Because a lot of times with the winds coming in, there's not a lot to protect the coast from basically from Perth down, but because the Cape is there, it kind of protects the Geograph Bay, especially in that middle point there near Castle Bay and Meelup, Bunker Bay, that whole area. So we went through there, and while it doesn't have coral, it has a lot of seaweed, and it has all these granite boulders in the water. So I think generally the more interesting the architecture is underwater, the more interesting it's going to be. There's going to be a lot more fish there. So we saw a whole lot of fish. I saw a shark, small shark, and then we saw a school of squid swimming through. And at the end, just when we were about to finish, a massive stingray swam right past me, and then between the rocks where Alyssa was, and then past the bay, and then out. And that was incredible. It was the best snorkel I've done outside of heading to Ningaloo. So yeah, it was really good, and I really recommend it.
And the other side of the Cape, Yelling Up Lagoon. Not done this one, but it looks quite interesting. No one's done it?
I have.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll rephrase that then.
I didn't like it as much as Castle Bay, so we did this first, and I was like, yeah, it's all right. I mean, it's nice in that it's sheltered, it's easy, it's you just walk down the steps and it's there. But it was no better than Metham's Pool, and a lot of people sort of big upped it. But on the day that we went, you couldn't go much further out because the waves were really bad, and they were having like a surf competition, so you can kind of see what kind of weather it was there. So it was nice, but it was like, well, I could just go to Metham's Pool, which is a half-hour drive for me, whereas this is a few hours drive. So I didn't love it, and it certainly wasn't as good as going to Castle Bay.
So along this stretch, as you're running through the Cape to Cape, there's a lot of spots, and one of them is the aquarium, which is a very popular area, accessible just off the track. And another one along the Cape to Cape is Hamlin Bay, which is famous for the rays that like to frequent that little historic jetty there and interact with the tourists.
I've not been game to snorkel there, because while they are very friendly, I found the water a bit murky, but people rate it, so...
Yeah.
But, I mean, at the very least, I think it's worth going there to interact with the rays. I actually enjoyed it more than Monkey Maya with the dolphins.
I mean, it's certainly picking up in popularity, and, again, leave no trace. Like, they're not there for you to pat. Gives them the respect because they do have a big stinger on the end, and you never know what sets them off. But yeah, I'm quite keen to do that one. I'm thinking I'm going to take my snorkel gear on the Cape to Cape and maybe have a go if they get good weather.
They say you can go out towards the direction of the island that's there, so
Mm.
it looks really good. I'm super keen to do that. Folks who live down there, that's really popular with the locals.
And moving around, so the south coast it's not the best area because of the weather. It gets battered quite heavily by the winds.
King waves kill.
Yes, and the quite tall cliffs make it a bit hard to access the water. But around the Denmark area, you do have Greens Pool, which is a very sheltered bay, very pretty bay, and another popular tourist spot.
Yeah, again, very similar to Castle Bay in that rough area, but because it's sheltered, it can be very calm. And so again, this is a lot of interesting granite formations underwater where you can swim around, and as a result, you'll see interesting things. So we did this just before they closed the park recently for the renovations that they're doing, and I saw some rays. I saw a lot of different fish all through the area. And even though it's very popular, people don't generally go out to the outer walls of the pool, mainly because they don't want to get taken out. But there's a lot to see in there, and I rated it as a place because it's a mix of things. Sometimes it's really good to have great visibility and see things, and sometimes it can be murky, but you see a lot more, and then that's makes it fine. But I think generally the conditions are really good to see things here, so as a result, you're more likely to have an enjoyable snorkel. So yeah, really rate it. And if that bay is too busy, you can always try Elephant Rock. And then further down, there is also a secret beach just a little bit further around, and that also is sheltered and has similar granite formations.
So moving away from Denmark, there is one spot near Albany that's quite nice, which is Waichinukat, which you've snorkeled, Shavaurn, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a beautiful little inlet. So I'd heard about it through a local and had a paddle on my sup and then hopped in snorkeling at the end. Beautiful boulders, and there's usually dolphins at the end because apparently it's a birthing place for the dolphins. So I was there again, the dolphins came in, it was just magic, really, really nice spot. And you can actually camp there as well. So it's kind of got everything for a great little getaway.
And I guess we'll give a hearty special mention to some other spots around the coast. So Bremer Bay, Hopeton, Fitzgerald River National Park and Cape Le Grand all have the similar granite sheltered bays that you can snorkel at, and I guess in the future we'll be visiting and checking out those areas.
Yeah, last time I was in Fitzgerald River, I was by myself and I didn't have my snorkeling gear with me anyway, but the waters are pretty calm because a lot of those bays are quite sheltered, and I really regretted not having my snorkeling gear because it looked like a really good spot.
But you do have to pick your day though, because there are lots of rips around those areas, so if it is a bit out of your depths, so to speak, just be careful. So while we've got you here, Shavaurn, we might as well talk about snorkel safety and then also the jump from snorkeling to more advanced snorkeling and then on to diving. First of all, start with the safety aspect. Do you have any tips for people starting out and what they should be doing to make sure that they're safe?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have an experienced buddy or a buddy that you feel really safe and trust. So someone who, I started snorkeling with my dad, so I always felt particularly safe with him. And then, as I grew older and gained more experience snorkeling, I learnt that, hey, this isn't too scary, too intimidating, and you sort of grow your experience, and now I'm kind of the person that people want to go snorkeling with to learn more about snorkeling. So you got to really find that person, and there are some good and knowledgeable groups on Facebook and things like that, and you shoot out any questions and people will answer, and shoot out that you're looking for a buddy and people will respond. So that's finding the right buddy is key, and always having a buddy. That is absolutely number one. You should never go snorkeling alone or diving of any kind alone. Getting a little bit better, so reading the weather is really important. So basically in Perth, in WA, we're looking for the southwest wind. The wind is going to come up usually in the afternoons and possibly destroy any snorkeling plans that you had for the day. So it's usually a pattern of a light easterly in the morning, picking up to a southwesterly of 20 knots plus in the afternoon, and working out how that relationship between the wind and the shape of the bays or the shape of the coastline works. So you're looking for the leeward side of a bay to snorkel in if there's a southwest there. So you're looking for the wind to reach land and there be a bit of a wind shadow for you to snorkel in if there is a bit of that southwest breeze blowing. But ideally, you're snorkeling on a nice light easterly in the morning. That's usually the typical Perth pattern. So learning that pattern, learning to use weather apps like Willy Weather, Sea Breeze, Windy app, or Med-Eye. And as you practice, you get a little bit better at working these things out and reading the weather pattern. And then if you're really into snorkeling and wanting to learn how to take better photos or stay down for a little bit longer, I highly recommend doing a freediving course. So this allows you to learn how to safely extend your underwater time, extend your breath hold. So I did a course and it was really, really interesting. So not just for the snorkeling side of things, but also the mindfulness, relaxation side of things. So it teaches you to slow yourself down, to slow your heartbeat down, to slow your oxygen utilization down, to relax, because you can't extend your breath hold if you're not relaxed. So it was a really, really interesting course to do, and I highly recommend doing one of those if you're either interested in mindfulness in any way or you're interested in snorkeling.
Because I think it was a documentary once about free divers, and they have like a ridiculously low resting heart rate. It's like 30 or something, when your average would be 50 to 60 if you're healthy.
Yep, that's right. And they train. There's a number of people who do like dry land training where you have apps on your phone and you're practicing at home or you're practicing in the pool, and they really really quite serious about it. You know, they might be trying for maximum depths or maximum breath holds or competing. I'm not going down that road. I just really do this to become a better snorkeler and to look at things longer under the water, or to follow things with my GoPro and take pictures longer, or to challenge myself with some swim throughs. So I've done freediving level 1, and maybe I'll do freediving level 2 after a year or so, and that's kind of where I'm heading with things, just getting more enjoyment out of my snorkeling. So if you're in that sort of level of feeling like you're wondering where to go with your snorkeling, I really recommend a freediving course.
And in terms of gear, what would you recommend someone if they're looking to get a little bit more serious, apart from just the basic sets you could buy?
Yeah, well, I would recommend wetsuits. So a lot of people don't snorkel with a wetsuit because they feel that, it's quite a warm summer's day, the water's not that cold, but a wetsuit will really help you to stay out for a little bit longer. Something like I snorkel and swim and kite in a 4-3 all summer, so I'm a little bit I'm a little bit of a wuss when it comes to the cold, but long arms, long legs, I feel protects you from the sun as well. So, you can always get the good old burn on the back of the leg when you're snorkeling. So sun protection, warmth protection to extend your snorkeling time. And then with adding that rubber to your body, you're adding buoyancy. So I really recommend a weight belt. Even if you're a beginner snorkeler, it's going to give you equilibrium in the water. So that neutral buoyancy. If you are a little bit more advanced and you're going for a little bit of a dive through a swim through or looking at a fish or taking a photo, you're going to be fighting against the rising to the top all the time if you're not wearing a weight belt. So if you go into your local dive shop, they'll be able to help you out with how many weights to wear and what kind of weight belt you're going to need. Yeah, and then you can start with some very basic fins, mask, snorkel, that sort of thing. You can adjust as you go. So there's a number of great dive shops in Perth, and the staff are always really happy and knowledgeable to help you and tell them what you're looking for. The fit of your mask is really important. The dive shop personnel will be able to help you, put it on and see if it's a good fit. Snorkel. Yeah, that's a great thing about snorkeling is you don't need a whole lot of gear, and it's not super expensive once you're set up. And then, of course, all it is maybe petrol to get to the snorkeling spot. It's something everyone can enjoy, and it's a good family activity.
Cool. Yeah, that was very thorough. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So that's it for Perth and the South West. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yes, we'll be back in 2 weeks with the second part of the snorkeling series as we look to the north of Perth, to the rest of Western Australia. Thank you everyone for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode or any other episode of Real Trail Talk, then please rate us on whatever platform you're currently listening to us on. Ratings really help for us to reach an audience and for people who maybe are looking to learn about the outdoors in Western Australia and Australia in general. If you had any questions or any suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com, or you can contact us through our social media channels. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.